I thought giving them the house while I was still alive was the right thing to do. A gesture of trust, of love. Something a father does when he believes in his children. I had worked nearly 4 decades as a schoolteacher and handyman, fixing other people's roofs and teaching kids how to navigate the world. I had built the house with my own hands, literal sweat soaked into the beams, memories layered into the paint, love carved into the foundation. My wife and I raised our 2 boys in it. We celebrated every birthday, every holiday, and mourned her death there. It was sacred ground to me, and I wanted them to have it, Marcus and Dylan, because I didn't want them to wait until I was gone to appreciate it. But the moment I transferred the deed into their names, everything shifted. At first, I thought I was imagining it, Marcus cutting me off mid-sentence, Sharon, his wife, rolling her eyes when I asked about dinner plans, Dylan sending fewer texts. The warmth I knew was fading, slowly replaced by the chill of entitlement and hidden resentment. Before we dive into the story, we'll love to thank you for your continued support to this channel. If you enjoy this story and stories like this, kindly subscribe and hit on the notification button so you don't miss any of our stories. Our shout out goes to Mickey Stroda from Kansas. We will love to hear from you also. Tell us your name and where you're watching from in the comments section. We'll love to give you a shout out in our next video. Now let's begin. One day, I walked into the living room to find Sharon showing an interior designer around. She pointed to the bookshelf I had handcrafted from maple in 1982 and said, "This ugly thing has to go." I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. She didn't even acknowledge me. When I asked Marcus about it, he said, "Dad, we're just trying to update the house. You've had your style for decades, it's our turn now." I nodded, swallowed the sting, and left the room. They began replacing everything, ripping out the carpets, removing the photos, painting over the wall where my wife's height chart for the kids still lingered in faded pencil lines. My presence, once welcomed, became inconvenient. I was in their way, even when I didn't speak. Sharon made sure to sigh loudly whenever I used the kitchen. Marcus no longer sat with me for morning coffee. Dylan stopped bringing the grandkids over. I overheard them one evening while I stood in the hallway. Sharon said, "Why is he still here? The house is ours. He can leave whenever he wants." I didn't react. I didn't confront them. I just quietly packed a bag one night and vanished before dawn. I left no note, no trace, just my silence. But I didn't leave the house empty. Deep beneath the basement, behind a wooden panel no one had touched in years, I left something behind. Something that would turn the house they took from me into a burden they couldn't bear. They didn't search for me. That much I knew. Days passed. Then weeks. I stayed in a rented cabin by the lake, a place I used to take my wife before the boys were born. The peace was deafening at first, but eventually it wrapped around me like a blanket. I didn't check in. I didn't call. I wanted them to feel the weight of their choices without interference. Meanwhile, they were transforming the house I built into something unrecognizable. Marble countertops, imported tile, artificial grass in the garden. They even renamed the Wi-Fi. But then came the water leak. That's how it all began. A minor plumbing issue turned into a crawlspace discovery when a contractor pulled off a panel and noticed a small, rusted lock. Behind it, a hidden steel door. Not something they could explain. Not something they had a key to. And definitely not something they expected. They pried it open curious, greedy, unaware. Inside, they found a room filled with file boxes, journals, and an old CRT monitor connected to a sealed safe. There was no treasure, no gold. But what they discovered was more dangerous than any fortune. Letters addressed to each of them. Recordings of conversations they thought had gone unheard, because I had started recording long ago, when I first noticed the cold shift in their tone, the private smirks, the cruel words. Everything was time-stamped. Everything was filed. There was also the deed and signed. The actual transfer of full ownership had never been completed. And the last page, the one I left visible on purpose, contained a single line written in red ink. "I gave you a gift, and you made it a curse." A small switch beside the monitor activated a time delivery that alerted my lawyer. He arrived at the house 3 days later with law enforcement. You see, I had drawn up a legal clause years ago, buried so deep within the transfer documents that only he and I knew it existed. It stated, in the event the grantor is mistreated, neglected, or pressured to vacate, the property shall revert to his sole ownership immediately and irrevocably. All I had to do was trigger it, and I did. The moment I walked away. The moment I pressed the button hidden inside my old walking stick. The day the sheriff pulled up, Marcus thought it was about the remodeling permits. Sharon walked out in heels and attitude, waving her hands and trying to explain something about a new home office being installed. The officer handed them the documents without saying a word. 30 days. That's all they had. But they didn't even need 30. Because within hours, news spread. Their friends stopped calling. Contractors stopped showing up. Dylan arrived that evening, livid and confused, demanding to speak to me. But I wasn't there. I was standing across the street, inside a black SUV with tinted windows, watching. Not with bitterness. Not with triumph. Just peace. I had given them everything, and they spat on it. So I took it back without raising my voice. They begged. They emailed. They even found my cabin once, stood at the gate yelling apologies into the trees. But it wasn't me they were apologizing to, it was their reflection. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry for what they lost. And I had no more time for people who only recognized your value when your absence hurt more than your presence ever did. I moved back in, not into the house, but into the guest cottage I built for my wife during her final months. It still smelled faintly of lavender and wood polish. I kept the house locked, untouched. Let it stand as a monument of what happens when inheritance becomes entitlement. One afternoon, I visited the basement. I took the letters, the files, and everything else and burned it all in the fireplace. I had no desire to live in the past. I simply wanted to ensure they would never forget it. Now, I plant vegetables in peace. I rise with the sun, sleep before the moon reaches its peak. The house remains behind me, a quiet structure filled with silent lessons. And when people ask why I never returned to my children, I simply say, sometimes, disappearing is the only way to be seen. If this story moved you, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have done what I did, or something different? And if you love stories where silence becomes the loudest revenge, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. More true-to-life tales are coming your way, only here on this channel. Thank you for watching.